today on Lawyers Rising.
It takes a lot to run a good-sized law firm. You have to be committed to it.
25 facts attorneys need to know about law firm politics. Hello and welcome. I'm joined today by three members of the BCG Attorney Search team. Brie Mills is recruiting manager, Romina Filippou is a recruiter, and Harrison Barnes is the founder and chief executive. Hello to you all.
Morning.
Good morning.
So today we're going to talk about some of the most important facts that attorneys and law students and even partners should know about law firm politics. Just to kind of set up this conversation, maybe I'd like to go around the horn and just talk about those unspoken, those unwritten rules that maybe you were never taught in school, and just how important that really is for an attorney's career. Anybody can jump in here, but I think with any career, there are these unspoken rules that you kind of have to figure out on your own. We're trying to help guide folks on that, but can you guys talk a little bit about that just to set this conversation up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that when you're in law school, and especially when you're kind of gearing towards getting, a big law firm job, you just are really not prepared for the reality of what kinds of expectations there are going to be and just sort of navigating the law firm. So that's really what we're here to talk about today, to just really give people an understanding and a groundwork for what are you getting yourself into and what is there to be expected and how do you survive it and how do you thrive and succeed.
So we're referencing an article that Harrison wrote at bcgsearch.com, and I think maybe we should just jump right into it, starting with the first rule, first lesson, which is to avoid people with issues in the firm. I guess every workplace has them, but can you elaborate on that point? Why do you want to avoid people with issues in the firm?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that if you're seen associating with people that have, problems, whether it's performance related or they may be leaving the firm and they have issues that, people that they have problems with will assume that you're, on their side. And if they assume that, then they're likely to have issues with you as well. And so you just kind of want to stay away from that. And there's always going to be people that are upset inside of a law firm. And then I think the other thing is just that, whatever negative people say to you and whatever they think is going to rub off on you. So, and then you're going to see the world kind of in their negative way. So, you don't want to really pollute your mind with that. I mean, you need to stay positive. And if you stay positive, then you're going to be much better off than if you look at things in a negative way. And there's going to be people in every firm that are going to see things in a negative way. And it's important to stay away from them.
Yeah, Romina, I suppose that's especially important working in a stressful law firm where the work is difficult, the hours are long. So keeping a positive mindset is critical to success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I think people with issues can kind of come in different forms. I mean, there are people who maybe, like Harrison was saying, aren't happy with the law firm or the work that they're doing, and their negativity can rub off onto other people. And then, there's people who maybe don't do very good quality work. And, I think people over time will start to realize, at an early point in your career, you might sort of fly under the radar in terms of, doing lower quality work. But over time, people are going to start to realize. So, yeah, you need to sort of associate yourself with people who are well liked by the partners and the senior associates and who do good quality work, especially as a junior associate. Obviously, you want to learn from and develop as an associate under someone who does do good quality work and who is well liked and who has a good attitude.
The second point that Harrison makes in his article really ties into the first, and it's about avoiding working with toxic partners and senior associates. Working with coworkers that are toxic, that's one thing, but it becomes even more problematic, I think, when you're talking about dealing with bosses and supervisors who have kind of toxic personalities. How do you go about doing that, about trying to avoid those people or at least trying to reduce your contact with them?
I think it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. I think Harrison mentions in his article that the toxic partners or the partners that are difficult to work with are sort of known a lot of the times. And sometimes associates are hired to work specifically under those difficult partners. So in that case, you might be in trouble before joining a firm. If it seems like you're going to be working under one partner, I think it's good to kind of ask around as much as possible, ask other associates what it's like to work with, that partner. I would say after you get the offer, obviously you kind of have to be careful about what kinds of questions you ask early on in the interview process. But once you've gotten an offer, I think it's totally fine to ask those questions of associates, about what it's like to work for a particular partner. But if there is sort of some say, I would try to stay away from the toxic partners. And toxic partners, like I said about associates, can come in different forms, but a toxic partner can be someone who's just really, really difficult to work with. And, obviously someone like that is probably not going to be very happy with the work product that you put forward, and they're less likely to give you a good year-end review. And that can definitely affect your advancement within the firm.
Does anyone else want to jump in on that point, Harrison or Brie?
Well, yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. And I mean, the adage is that, 1/3 of the people you won't like, 1/3 of the people will like you, 1/3 of the people will not care. So if it's someone you just kind of automatically don't think you're going to like, it's probably a good idea to avoid working for them. And you're not, when you get into the firm, I mean, you're generally going to start hearing stories about people, working with others and having bad experiences. And so as you see that, it's best to kind of avoid the people that seem like they're going to be problematical. Just, to the extent you can stay away from them, it's going to be the smartest thing you can do.
Yeah, and I just have a sort of a story about a senior associate that I think is relevant here. I was working with a senior associate who would always try to kind of take credit for the work that I was doing. So I would do some great work. And because she was sort of in between me and the partner, she would kind of repackage my work and send it to the partner without really crediting me. So that's another kind of toxic sort of supervisor situation that can happen that is really not ideal, and that you're not getting the kind of the credit that's due, and you're not being able to establish your reputation with that partner too. So understanding that dynamic is also important, and I think similar to like what Romina said, you can kind of suss some of that stuff out, and to the extent that you might not want to work with that, that's just something else to be aware of, because that can definitely kind of impede your progress in the firm if you're not even getting credit for the work that you're doing. And also just a good rule, just something to think about if any senior associates are listening, that's really not cool. And so, and that's going to be something that's going to probably rebound on you in a negative way down the line. So, I think just best practices of being a positive, presence in the workflow is something to aim for.
Well, I suppose the corollary to that point is trying to associate yourself with partners who have large books of business, who are easier to work with. I mean, this is probably self-evident, but can we talk a little bit more about how you can engage with those sorts of partners, those senior associates in the firm, while trying to avoid those that have these more toxic elements to their personality?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to relationship building and kind of being present at the firm. I know there was a lot of advice given to me to kind of be around, certainly be at the office, because a lot of offices don't really have FaceTime requirements, quote unquote. It's like you don't have to be in your office, but you're really missing out on a big firm networking opportunity if you aren't. So we had like a cafeteria that was in our law firm, and like just going to lunch and being seen by partners, like you're kind of become top of mind to that partner, and they might come to you for work, and you just being social and making yourself known and making partners aware that you want to work with them is definitely a good first step.
And then in terms of partners with large books of business, obviously I think there are two types of partners. There are, the rainmaker partners that have a lot of their own business, and then there are service partners that work underneath the partners that have the big books. And obviously I think it's best to work for the partners with big books because they are, they have a steady stream of work and clients that, they service, and that if you work for those partners, you should hopefully have a steady stream of work as well. And, I think if at some point you're sort of still at the firm and you're up for partner, I think those partners with the big books of business, like Harrison mentions in his article, will have kind of more pull. The firm obviously wants to keep them happy because they're bringing in a lot of work and a lot of clients, a lot of money for the firm. So, that rainmaker partner is going to have more of a say when you're maybe up for partner. And then obviously if something happens with the firm and, the firm's not doing so well, or the partner goes to another firm, if you do good work for that, big book of business partner, he or she's a lot more likely to bring you over to a new firm with him or her. So there are a lot of advantages, I would say, to working with a partner with a big book of business.
Harrison, do you want to jump in on that point?
No, I think Romina made really all the important points. I mean, and I think the biggest one to be concerned about is if the partner moves, then they can also take you with them. So, the partners, when law firms have problems and they go out of business and so forth, or when partners move to a better firm, or if there's a better opportunity for one reason or another, if you're working for a partner with a lot of business, that partner is typically going to be able to bring you with you, whereas other partners won't. So partners with a lot of business have, more ability to make you partner. They have more ability to give you work and keep your hours up, because your hours are very important. When layoffs occur, it's usually the people that don't have enough hours. So, if you work with partners that have a lot of business, you can always get a lot of business as well in the future from them and work. And one thing I saw that was interesting to me is I was sitting on a plane with a corporate partner that was from a major law firm in Costa Mesa that was a LA-based law firm, and he was a corporate partner, but his clients were these just giant healthcare clients, and I don't think that firm had made any corporate partners in their Costa Mesa office really, for any equity partners, and really for 20, 30 years, and he told me that the way he got all his work was a partner retired and left him all his clients. So when you work for major partners with a lot of business, if they retire, they can also give you a lot of their clients, and that can be very helpful for you as well.
Okay, let's shift away from the kind of interpersonal characteristics inside of a firm to more internal things that you need to work on yourself, or make sure the mistakes that you don't make with your own behavior. Starting with never complaining about anything, especially when you're a young attorney. I think this applies really to any field, but especially as a young attorney, you want to avoid being seen as a complainer. Again, kind of self-evident, but can we talk a little bit about why that is so important?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the work it can be very difficult, and you might have a natural inkling to complain because things might be tough. But when you complain, it really just brings a negative energy to the whole thing. I mean, like, everybody's kind of dealing with the same thing, and if you're the only one complaining, I mean, people are going to think, well, okay, so this person just can't handle the work. They're not fully committed. So I think nobody likes to work with a complainer, and it's a real bummer. So I think even if you're feeling those things, it's really just kind of important to keep it to yourself and maybe find other outlets to complain outside of the firm. If that's just something that you need to kind of, for your own mental health, is to find, a good friend who's got nothing to do with your firm, but just you can call up your best friend and complain, or talk to your significant other. Just don't bring it into the office. But even that, I think, everybody complains at the workplace, but yeah, anyway, I think you have to find a different outlet for it.
Yeah, just don't make it into a daily habit.
Well, and then the other thing is that if people think positively, they're more likely to give you work and better reviews, and think of you in a positive way. So it's just very important.
They're more likely to give you work, and they're likelier to give you better reviews, and they're more likely to sort of give you the inside scoop, warn you of danger, warn you about other associates that maybe don't have your best interest, or speaking negatively about you. And senior associates and partners that you're working for are more likely to overlook your mistakes if you sort of have a generally positive attitude and you don't complain too much. So I think that rings true in a lot of professions. I'm sure, it's better to be kind of positive and not complaining, and good things will kind of come back to you.
Yeah. And I think it can't be underestimated how important it is to be nice to everybody, including the legal staff at a firm, because they have a lot more pull than you might realize, and they gossip and talk, and if you're mean to like a secretary or a paralegal, and if you're short with them or impatient with them, or just don't treat them well, a lot of partners have really good relationships with their own legal secretaries, and if that stuff starts to kind of get, that rumor starts around the office that Joe Schmo is a real piece of work and is really treating the secretaries terribly, and that can really have a negative impact on your overall reputation at the firm. So don't discount those other relationships outside of just the other attorneys in the office.
Yeah, and going part and parcel with that, and earlier in this conversation, we were talking about trying to avoid people that are negative or toxic. inside the firm. So you want to avoid doing that as well. Talking negatively about others in the firm, spreading gossip, being that person, again, is something you probably desperately want to avoid, especially in your early years at the firm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have seen partners who have been reported, have had paralegals report to them about what an attorney did. And so now a partner knows how crappy this associate is treating a paralegal. And it's just, you can't think of the support staff as beneath you or they're not as important. And I've seen that mistake made by a lot of young attorneys who just have a bit of a self-entitled air, really kind of having a negative impact on their career at the firm.
Yeah, and then in terms of talking negatively about other associates and partners, obviously it's something that you should probably not do. I remember I was working at a big law firm and I was working under a mid-level associate. I think she was around a fourth year, and she just loved to talk negatively about everyone, partners, associates. And it was a little uncomfortable for me. Obviously, I was a first year and she sort of held herself out to me as a mentor. But, a lot of the times, rather than mentoring me, she was just sort of talking negatively about everyone, about a guy that she had brought into the firm, about her close friend at the firm, about partners. So it can be tricky to navigate, especially when it's someone that you work sort of directly under. And like Brie mentioned, she was a mid-level, not a senior, but she sort of was directly between me and the partner on a couple of the matters that I was working on. So it's tricky. I mean, and she's actually still at the firm. She's a senior counsel at the firm. So unfortunately, I don't think my firm sort of really has the luxury to let people go. But I think if she were at another firm, she probably would be long gone by now. But I'm pretty sure she's still up to the same antics.
What about just being seen to be working hard, and to actually be working hard, not just to be seen to be working hard? But, I think this is kind of, again, an obvious thing that nevertheless, a lot of young attorneys, a lot of young people generally kind of forget that how important it is to be something of a billing machine, especially in your early years. Can you talk a little bit about that, about working hard and being seen to be working hard?
Well, I mean, billing is like the most important thing that, in a law firm in terms of what creates revenue. And, the people that bill the most hours typically, are the ones that are contributing the most to the firm financially. As long as they have a good attitude to go along with it, I mean, that's positive as well. But, one of the examples that I gave is, I saw someone that was actually working two jobs, but billing a lot of hours. And for some reason, they were able to get away with it for 5 years, and, which is pretty astonishing to me, because if they hadn't been billing a lot of hours, or at least turning in a lot of hours, then that would have been a problem. But one of the things that I see and that I think is very important about billing a lot of hours is that in order to get a lot of hours, you typically need to do very good work. So, partners and others aren't going to give you work to do unless you're doing good work. And so billing hours is not always a sign just of the fact that you're working hard. It's that you're doing very good work, and people are continually assigning you more work to do. And that's what's one of the reasons it's most important. And typically when law firms make partnership decisions, in addition to, if you have business and so forth, I mean, they're also looking at, how hard you work and how, much you distinguish yourself in terms of your hours and your financial contribution to the firm compared to other people. And then one final thing also is that, if you are billing a lot of hours, then, and if a law firm doesn't have to write off your time when they do believe it's productive, then that's also something that can make a big difference.
And when I'm sort of working with associates and trying to help them with a lateral firm move, a lot of the times, or pretty much always, I'll ask the associate how many hours they've been billing for the last couple of years. And if they've been billing, 2,000 hours or more, I usually mention that in their cover letter as, something that's impressive. And a lot of my candidates tell me that in their interviews, firms will ask them how many hours they've been billing. And so it's interesting because sometimes if the firm is going through a rough period, you might not get as much work, but that's usually held against the associate. So you really need to be doing everything you can to bill those hours without overbilling. I think Harrison sort of mentions in this article that, one of the types of people with problems is someone who overbills, and the senior associate that I just mentioned. I remember a partner complaining to another partner that his client had complained that she was billing too many hours on a particular matter, and the other partner sort of covered for her because the other partner really liked her, and said that, she's just a mid-level associate, she's still getting the hang of things. But, if you continue to do that, overbilling can definitely get back to you. If you get sort of the reputation of someone at the firm that's overbilling, that's definitely going to hurt your career, and you could even get fired for it.
Moving on, and this kind of goes in part with, being sure that you're seen to be working hard, is having a reputation for taking things seriously, also understanding how to create work. This all kind of goes together about how you approach your day-to-day work. Maybe we should take those in turn, starting with having a reputation for taking work seriously. So not only being seen to be working hard, but taking it seriously, not necessarily the same thing. Can anybody expand on that a little bit for me?
Yeah, I think that taking the work seriously really means that you are, when you're given an assignment, there's like a way to just do it like on a cursory level, and there's a way to really show that the work that you're doing is that you're taking all of the factors into consideration, and that you're really finding like the heart of the issue and addressing that. Because sometimes the assignment that you might get, it might need to actually morph a little bit into something deeper. And I think the best associates and the associates that get the most, like the best reviews, are the ones who will take sort of the prompt and the work and really be able to you can see that the person cares about it, really. I mean, there's a difference between doing the work and just being able to check that box that it's done, and showing the partner or whoever has given you the work that you really thought about this, you took this seriously, you thought about every angle, and you were thinking about things because you're thinking so deeply about it that maybe even the partner hadn't, because they just kind of thought about, like, generally we need to understand like this aspect of the law, but you took it and ran with it and found, worked it inside and out. And that kind of work is really going to get you to be set apart from the rest of your, because sometimes what I'll see is a partner will give an assignment and want a question answered, and they want a question answered in a certain way. And that's not exactly what the law is. So rather than coming back to the partner and saying like, oh, well, the law doesn't actually say this, you need to find analogous cases, or you need to be able to look at the issue from a different perspective and find an answer. So maybe the answer doesn't exist how we wanted it to, but we found a different way to answer it and got to the desired result, which I think a lot of young associates just don't do. They'll just be like, sorry, no, that's not the answer, and leave it at that. But that's not sort of taking it to the next level and as deeply as you need to. So,
yeah, one thing that I saw that's kind of funny is, and I was working with one time I had an attorney working, or someone that actually became an attorney working at a company called Law Crossing here, and he was very smart and had gotten like in the 170s or something on his LSATs and ended up going to a top 10 law school. But one day I gave him an assignment to write the top like 100 benefits of using Law Crossing or something along those lines, which, you don't have to be that smart to come up with reasons. But, the first time he came back, he said, I can only think of 10. And then I was like, well, you have to come up with, a lot more than that. His assignment was 100. And then, so over the course of the next like 2 weeks, like he could never kind of get to 100 every time he would turn in this assignment. And I knew that this guy would not be a good attorney. I just, because if you can't think on your feet and don't take something seriously like that. So sure enough, like he got a job as a summer associate at a big firm, and then he didn't get an offer. And then he literally, because he didn't even take his job search seriously either, he never ended up getting a job in a decent sized law firm of more than like 3 or 4 people ever again, and ended up becoming a solo practitioner, and then going into advertising or something and not doing well at that either. So, the thing is, when you get any type of assignment, regardless of what it is, it's something that, whoever's given you the assignment and whoever the client is, I mean, for them, it's like the most important thing in the world. So, you need to, regardless of how important you think it is, you need to make sure, that you take it seriously as well. And then, and I tell the story here in this, about an attorney I know that recently fired someone, and that was kind of the same thing. Like the attorney wouldn't look deeply into issues and would just do a very cursory examination. And I mean, to the extent where, I mean, one of her briefs, he told me about, like she would, when she would turn things in, like she would do things like she would call a house an apartment, or just make mistakes like that consistently that showed she didn't really care about the quality of work she was doing. So, you need to be very, very, take the work you're doing very seriously. And I think, like Bree said, you need to look at a different level of it, look at a different, and do it better than other people can, because that's what makes people advance. And it's the same thing in, businesses continually improve, and businesses that don't improve and do things better and make things easier for customers and so forth, fail. And so you need to do that. It's the same thing with products and services and everything.
You mentioned something interesting there, Harrison, about having to think on your feet being such an important skill, especially in the early part of your career. And part of that situational awareness, I think, has to do with how do you create work. It's just not about doing the work that's assigned to you, understanding and being engaged with that work, but understanding how to create more work, which, is maybe not patently obvious when you first start, especially when things are just being assigned to you. So can you give some advice to especially younger people coming into the business, becoming young lawyers, about how to, understand how to create work, what the firm needs, and how you as a younger person can go about to trying to drum that work up?
Well, I mean, yeah, the most important thing in any business or, any company is creating work. So you want to, there always needs to be work to do. And if there's not work to do, then there's something wrong. And businesses and, attorneys will go out of business when they don't know how to create work. So, creating work, for a lot of attorneys may mean putting an ad in the back of a bus and hoping people call, and then doing work. So you need to understand how to bring in work. But, creating work means finding things that are wrong and creating more and more work, and just, things that the client can do, and extra things. And, I went to I've been to accountants and dentists and people before, and doctors, where, the work seemingly will never end if you let them. They'll just keep running away and finding all sorts of extra things that they can do. Chiropractors do that. And, a lot of other types of people will do that. And a lot of times the best attorneys will do that. They're always, finding new things to be done and new memos. And I remember I once worked for an attorney, and anytime a client would come in, he would immediately say that the client needed, 4 or 5 memos done on different things. And it could be something as simple as diversity jurisdiction, for whether or not, the client could file a lawsuit in federal court, which, you wouldn't think you would need a memo for that, but this guy would, have memos done for everything. And the reason is because it, drove up bills. It gave a work product to the attorney, to the client, and, kept things going. So attorneys need to understand how to create work and to do more and more. Just turning in a quick assignment a lot of times isn't enough. I mean, attorneys you're working for want to see, that you're able to, find a lot of stuff to be done.
And I think that creating work can also, for a junior associate, be as simple as, not being afraid to approach partners that you want to work with and asking for work. At my firm, it was understood that we had the managing partner of my firm, who was also the head of my practice group, would assign associates to deals, but it was also understood that you could approach partners and ask to be staffed on their deals. And I feel like some of the most successful associates in my group would do that. They would approach partners, ask to work with them. And then obviously that led to the creation of a lot of work and a lot of billable hours for those associates. So for a junior associate, I think it can just be that simple, asking for work and asking to be staffed on cases and deals. For a more senior associate, obviously it's going to look like building business, building up a book of business. And that can be done by attending networking events on behalf of the firm. In the recruiting business, it can be one of our fellow recruiters just attended a federal clerk event recently. And I know that she's now working with a couple of the clerks that she met with at that event. So it actually takes sort of a similar form for recruiters sometimes, but for, mid-level and senior associates, it can be just attending events, representing the firm at outside events. For me as a junior associate, it was working with, very young startups. A lot of the times they were these startups that were created by college kids. And obviously that's not going to lead to a whole lot of billable hours in business for the firm. But, when that startup is further along in their development, then that can lead to a lot more business. So yeah, I think creating work can take a lot of different forms.
We spoke earlier about how important it is to work hard, to be seen to be working hard. And, part of that is also actually being committed to the work, not just working hard, but working well. And this must be particularly difficult, I think, in certain practice areas where there's a lot of drudgery involved, where there's a lot of nose to the grindstone stuff, and trying to stay committed to that, to stay very interested in that, has got to be extremely challenging. What advice would you give to somebody that's kind of really struggling with that point in their career?
Well, I mean, the second you start talking about the fact that you want to go in-house, you want to do some other type of job, then then the partners and other people that work with you know that you're going to be leaving, and you're going to be looking for something that's a better opportunity. And they're going to, know that if they introduce you to clients, or they take you under their wing and they give you more training and they help you, that you're likely to leave. So, from their standpoint, why would they invest time in you if you're going to be leaving, to do something else? So a lot of people will talk about that. I mean, when I was practicing law, pretty much, everyone I knew would walk into my office and tell me how they were going to do something else. Even partners I know. It was funny. One time I was talking to the head of a pretty decent sized law firm. I was in his office because I think, he was representing me on some agreement or something. And it was a good sized law firm. It was probably like 30 or 40 people. It was a well-known LA law firm. And he started talking to me about how he owned all these Haagen-Dazs ice cream franchises, and they were his passion, and I couldn't believe it. Like, why is some guy owning 4 or 5 Haagen-Dazs ice cream chains with this giant, pretty decent sized law firm with these, very good attorneys in it? And sure enough, like about 3 years later, like his law firm just imploded, it takes a lot to even to run a good sized law firm, and to be, you have to be committed to it. And, and so it's pretty much like that with most professions. I mean, if you're not committed, someone else is going to be more committed than you. And you're not going to do well, whether you're a partner or an associate. So you do definitely need to be committed. There's a article that I wrote in BCG. It's called, I think, the number one career killer that most attorneys aren't taught, or something. And it has to do with commitment and the importance of, committing. And I recommend reading that article because it's, it is important, and it's something that, ends most careers inside of law firms. And so you need to be 100% committed. You don't necessarily need to tell people you're committed, because if you tell people you're committed, in my opinion, people that do that are always the first to leave. So I think that comes across more as a warning sign than anything. But you just need to show it through your actions.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that you either have or you don't, Harrison, that you're either super passionate about this and are fully committed, or you're not? It's kind of an off and, or kind of a binary thing, off or on?
Well, I think you have to, I think you have to sell yourself. And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make, is they really don't sell themselves on their job or doing well or that sort of thing. And the people that, advance and get better and succeed at anything are always the ones that, commit, because the longer you commit to something, the better you get at it. And the more intricacies you see in terms of how well you can do, the more respect you get in the organization, the deeper you look at something, the more effective you get when you are when you act. And and it's a matter of commitment. I mean, like with recruiting or any profession, if you're committed, you're going to work harder, you're going to make a lot more money, you're going to be able to provide a lot more value to people, that come across, and your job's going to be much more fun. I mean, just this legal recruiting, that I've been doing for a long time. I mean, I learned something new about it, multiple things new about it every day. And, if I wasn't like that, I never would. And I think too many people are looking for very simple jobs, where they can, just make money quickly or without a lot of effort. And people that do that may find something in the short run, but, and they typically won't in the long run. I'm thinking right now of this attorney that I know. He's, when I met him, he was selling insurance. And before that, he owned a software company. And then he decided to go to medical school to learn Chinese medicine. And then And then I recently saw him in a, like I was in a secondhand furniture store at lunch or something. I don't know what I was doing there, and I saw him there, and I hadn't seen him in years, and he was wearing a like a cardigan sweater, and I think he had one of those watches, that you wear on your that you put in your pocket, like a pocket watch, and he looked like a like a old school professor, and he said he was representing people that wanted to sue children or schools or something to be having handicapped kids. And this guy never commits to anything. He just does all these things and kind of follows the money. And, and it's not, and, my sense is that he'll be doing something new within a year or so. It's just, so if you don't commit, you're never going to do well in anything. And I think it's extremely important.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about personal responsibility and some of the things that you need to improve on yourself if you're really going to succeed in this career. And some of these are kind of self-evident, but on the other hand, maybe you don't realize the importance of them. Starting with never lying to anyone. Again, it's something we're taught from the beginning since we're children, but everybody lies to a certain degree. And why can it be so toxic inside the workplace if you start to, maybe start with some fibs and then get to more larger lies, especially if you get caught in some lies. But can we talk a little bit about that, about why it's so important to be seen as an honest person?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to start down a path of saying little white lies because maybe you didn't quite get something finished, or you're trying to kind of do a little bit of self-protection, and you think that, this little white lie may just buy me some time and then I can get this thing done. But I mean, lying is just a reason to get fired, and it's just very likely that any little lie can be found out in a law firm. So it's just crazy important to just be as straightforward as possible, even if that means a little bit of pain in the beginning because you have to come clean about something that you'd rather not. It's just going to be so much more harmful if you don't. So in a law firm more than any place, lies, the truth will out, and lies will just get you in trouble.
Well, another thing about lying that's really important is, it's, lying is trust is really one of the most important things. So it's the most important thing to relationships, between people. And it's the most important thing, especially if you're going to form a long-term relationship with someone. So, the second that trust is, second that trust is lost, it can never really be, gotten again. It takes a long time to reestablish it because, people need to trust people. Like this attorney, I told a story in this article about an attorney that, lost his job just within a week within making partner. And, I always think about that because it just seems so crazy that the firm is so mad and upset about it just for telling a little white lie about article. Not an article, about like a letter that he sent. And, but I think it's all about trust. They realized that they'd never be able to trust him. And I think that's important.
When it comes to taking responsibility, and that was a big part of what Brie said earlier about not lying, building little white lies around yourself to try and protect yourself, often a sign of, some lack of self-worth or a lack of a strong self-esteem. And a lot of that comes too with taking responsibility for mistakes. I see this with people all the time that I work with that, something has gone wrong and it's just excuses, rather than just saying, yeah, I made a mistake. No problem. I'll try and fix that. It's such an easy thing to do, but a lot of people can't do it. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important, especially in a firm environment?
Well, I think that, especially as a junior associate, it's understood that you'll make mistakes. And obviously there are mistakes and there are mistakes, but hopefully, the sorts of mistakes that you're making as a junior associate are small mistakes. So, going along with the last point, rather than lying about a mistake that you've made or trying to cover it up, I think it's important to sort of acknowledge the fact that you've made a mistake and try to learn from it. And as Harrison mentions in his article, they're part of the learning process at firms and everyone makes them. And the whole sort of thing about working at a law firm is you're really just learning as you go. You don't really learn how to practice law in law school. You really only learn to practice when you get out into the real world and you actually work at a law firm. So I think, the best thing that you can do is just take responsibility and learn from your mistakes. Certainly don't lie. And if it's a small mistake, which hopefully it is, no one will fault you for that. But just don't make the same mistake twice.
Does anyone else want to touch on taking responsibility for mistakes?
No, I think that's an important thing. And so the other thing is, a lot of times when people make mistakes, they try to blame other people, and that just creates enemies and create more problems for you. So, just make a mistake, you own up to it, and move on. I mean, that's really the most important thing you can do. And sometimes the mistakes are serious, but over time, people will forget about it.
Let's talk about some of the more social aspects of the work. And this is something that, again, isn't talked about, I'm sure, at all in law school, but it is so important to be part of this community that you're really a part of at the firm, and not only for personal reasons, but definitely for professional reasons as well. So starting with like attending firm-sponsored social events, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are maybe more wallflower types that would prefer to not have to show up at the staff Christmas party or whatever. But can we talk about why, Harrison, you think it's so important that you be seen at these social events, that you be seen to be attending?
Well, law firms, when you're in the office, I mean, you're typically seen as a very in a very kind of business-like type of environment, and people do not necessarily see you, with your guard down or being friendly in a more social way. Typically people switch gears a little bit when they go to social things. They'll start talking about vacations or their families, or it's a little bit more, or they'll kind of joke around about clients or things that they wouldn't talk about necessarily in a more formal setting when everyone means business. And so, allowing people to see the human side of you really can make a huge difference in terms of, your ability to, excel in the law firm and to do well, because people, want to have connections with people, and and that's really kind of what ends up, making a big difference. I was reading an article this morning where they were talking about actually things like this, like podcasts and blog articles and videos, and trying to say, well, what is the best length of that stuff? Should it be long? Should it be short? And they were saying that really the most important thing, a lot of the wisdom is like, oh, you just make a really short little blog post or short video, and that's all people want to see. But what people really want is they want to feel a connection to the company, and they want to feel a connection to, the people that they're dealing with, and because that's really what's most important. So to the extent you can make a connection, that's a big deal. And, you can do it in a short way sometimes, or you can do it in a longer way. But that's one of the reasons that the firm sponsored social events are important, because, having a connection with the people you work with is a big deal.
I remember that at my firm, we had to attend a training in Chicago, and I wasn't able to attend one of the dinners because I got staffed on a tech transactions deal at the last minute and had to do a bunch of due diligence for that deal. And the toxic mid-level associate that I've already mentioned, texted me and told all the other associates, where's Romina? Where's Romina? Why isn't she at this dinner? And I remember thinking, who cares if I'm at this dinner? And fortunately, I had a good reason for not being at the dinner, which was that I was doing work. But in retrospect, I realize now, I guess, that it is important to be seen, at holiday parties and get-togethers. You just definitely want to be seen as a team player. I think it's sort of a reflection of how dedicated, how committed you are to the firm. If you're interested in socializing with people and attending these get-togethers, it means that you enjoy your colleagues and you want to be part of the firm and you're part of the mission of the firm. So, these sort of things that don't seem to be very important actually are very important to, socialize with your peers, attend these firm-sponsored events.
So another aspect of the social aspect of working in a law firm is going out and meeting with clients and, making pitches for new business. It's something, I guess, that, again, is probably not easily taught. But why do you want to engage with that? Why do you want to be part of those pitches, especially as a young lawyer? Can you guys want to jump in on that?
Well, a lot of time the business pitch is the only actual face-to-face contact that lawyers will have with their clients for a long time. So, or in some cases, I've worked with attorneys before that have represented me for a couple of years that I actually never met. And so when you get to go to a business pitch, a lot of times, especially for associates and even for junior partners and others, that's an opportunity, to establish a relationship with a client, and then that client may actually end up giving you work in the future, and you'll be the one in the office that that they have that the client is sort of imprinted in with and has that relationship with. So that's important. But the other thing that's important is just to kind of watch how they work and to take responsibility for it. To some extent, you may not get the credit for it, but to have a role in bringing that client in, that's a big thing. And watching how more senior attorneys interact with clients and how they, may underpromise and overdeliver, and how they, frame issues and so forth. It's very important, to go to these business generation functions, and I think. And it's also an opportunity to get out of the office and to, to bond with, other attorneys and, to travel with them and to kind of form those informal relationships as well.
I'd like to move on by talking about how you interact with other people in the firm, and I guess how you're seen to be interacting as well. It's starting with criticizing management or senior attorneys. Everyone's got complaints about their bosses and coworkers. It's just part of the job. Can you talk a little bit why it's really important to avoid talking smack about management or other senior attorneys, especially publicly, especially, with other lawyers, other firms?
Well, the worst thing you can possibly do is criticize management or more senior attorneys. It's and especially attorneys. You just never know because, they can come down very, very hard on you, and and it's just not a good thing. I gave an example in the article of an attorney I once saw criticizing when I was a summer associate, criticizing the firm's pro bono record. And that may seem like a very, trivial thing. And I thought it was kind of funny. But he did it in front of, several important partners in the firm, that certainly, we're not happy to hear that in front of their summer associates. And I'd never seen I saw him being yelled at in the halls about his work and everything for a long time after that, because, the work an attorney does is very subjective. And so if you, if someone wants to get mad at you or they feel threatened by you, they can definitely, come down on you in ways that are ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. So, you need to be very, very careful of that.
What about keeping your personal life out of the office? Everyone's got lives that can get very complicated sometimes. And sometimes the only place that you feel you can vent is at work. Not a good idea, right?
Yeah, definitely not a good idea. And I think this is true in a lot of professions. But yes, I feel like law firms, are very small, insular environments, and word gets around quickly. So you certainly want to avoid speaking about your personal life, and certainly, engaging in romantic relationships, if possible, with others at your law firm. It, I guess, can seem pretty harmless if it's just between an associate, but certainly we all have stories from our firms of, partners having romantic relationships with associates, and that never really leads to good things. I remember the managing partner of my office and then another partner of my office were actually at another big law firm prior to coming to my firm. And one of them was sort of the junior partner, and then the other one was a junior associate. And the junior partner was married and had a child with someone else when I guess the two of them kind of engaged in romantic relationships, and they both ended up leaving the firm and coming to my firm. And so obviously things ended up well for them in the end, but I think it's a dangerous thing to do. I don't think it's a good policy to engage in if you can avoid it.
Well, and just, it's just not, relationships. It's kind of all types of personal things, because, you have to remember that a law firm is is a competitive environment, and so people will use anything that they can a lot of times against you, and in using those things against you will try to undermine you, and if they can undermine you to make themselves look better, they will. I was working with a partner not too long ago from a major law firm in New York City. He was an equity partner in a big firm, and he'd had too much to drink at a Christmas party, and told somebody some stuff. I don't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't that big of a deal. But when he sat down and they reviewed him, he got a review or something happened. I mean, they brought all this stuff up and that he'd said to this person. So the person had used it against him. And it wasn't even, he wasn't hitting on anybody or anything like that. He was just sharing some kind of, details from his personal life that he probably shouldn't have. So people will, use things against you. And so, the more things get around, with your personal life, you can definitely, hurt yourself quite a bit. Another, partner I remember his girlfriend or something had a temporary restraining order against him, and that got around. I think he lost his job because of it, just because he was, trying to rekindle a romance or something. I'm not saying it was a good thing or bad thing. I don't know exactly what happened, but it was out of the office, and so things can get back if you share things. So people will use anything negative they can against you.
And I think, fair or not, law firms, it's kind of see sometimes your personal life and your personal relationships are kind of an extension of your professional ones. And like if you have problems at home, whether it's fair or not, like the firm might think that there's that reflects poorly on you as an overall person and might sort of judge you for that. So I mean, I know that, for example, on the good side of things, like firms like to see people who are married, people who have strong relationships and strong family relationships, and it's a strange thing, but it's really, I really have sort of seen firms care about you having sort of your personal life together as a reflection of like whether or not you have the rest of your life together. So if you're kind of broadcasting issues that you're having in your personal life, that might sort of seep into how you're viewed professionally as well.
That's a good segue, Brie, about broadcasting your personal life, because we're going to talk about how your employer might find out about some, embarrassing aspects of your personal life. Before we had this conversation, I was reading an article about whether or not Amazon or Google's home speakers and video cameras are monitoring you and keeping track of you on a daily basis. Well, I mean, maybe it's an open question, but we do know who is almost certainly monitoring your phone calls and internet activity at the office, and that's your boss. Can you talk a little bit about that? Again, maybe something that people haven't considered, but the fact that, company phones and computers are monitorable, and oftentimes they are being monitored.
Oh yeah, I remember learning for the first time that they, like most law firms, have like sort of some sort of interoffice communication, like a kind of a IM type of communication, and absolutely that is monitored and monitorable. And I remember just being absolutely flabbergasted when I learned that. And you have these whole huge tech teams that are working at these law firms, and they have access to all of that stuff. And it's a very black box of like what the firms are actually looking for, or what they're doing with that information. But absolutely do not think that, any communications you're having like with your colleagues are absolutely private. So be forewarned.
Unless anyone think that this is some horrible intrusion on your privacy, it is nevertheless legal, right, guys?
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it must be. If it happens so much, that's a good point. I think in the office it probably is legal. Yeah. I don't know about recording phone calls, but that actually may be that may be legal too. I don't know, but
it definitely happens, though, right?
It definitely happens, and I've worked with people before where the law firm, like I mentioned in the article, where the law firm has found out that people are leaving just because they were monitoring their screens, and then I knew of another major New York law firm where someone went and they posted a comment about their firm on one of these kind of gossip news sites, and then the law firm, it was crazy. Like the law firm, like they'd posted something about negative about their law firm, and the law firm found out within like a couple hours, and went and just fired the person right away. And it was just something that they'd done at work from their work computer. So, and they found it out because I think they were recording their screens too. So I think, law firms will, they have clients to protect, I think, and I think probably the reason it is legal, because if you're thinking about, a law firm, representing a client in a mergers and acquisition, transaction where stock may be at issue and they don't want insider trading and stuff. That's probably one reason they do it.
And I found, this isn't really mentioned in the article, but I found that with candidates that I work with, a lot of the times I'll source candidates by emailing them directly to their firm email addresses. And 98% of the time, those people will respond from personal emails or will call me. And I didn't realize that when I was a junior associate. I used to get emails from recruiters and I would just respond, not realizing that there was a possibility that the firm might be monitoring my email or my screen activity. But, if you are going to work with a recruiter, it might go without saying, but, you should probably be on the safe side and email them from a personal email address or just call them.
I want to cycle back to a conversation we were having earlier about the quality of your work and how that you can maintain not only the appearance of doing hard work, but doing good work as well. And I was thinking that maybe we should talk a little bit about how you balance what you're taking on. Especially when you're a young person, you want to be seen as saying yes, yes, yes to everything. Take on as much as you possibly can. You don't want to be seen as somebody that is kind of refusing work, saying that, no, I simply can't do this anymore. But you kind of have to at a certain point, right? You can't do everything. And especially when people will continue to, stack up more assignments on your desk. How do you balance that? How do you balance that thing where you can say, listen, this is as much as I can possibly do without hurting your relationships with others in the firm?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most difficult tightropes to walk early in your career, because you are excited to take on the new work and you want to learn and you want to get this new work and you want to have a good reputation for being a team player and a go-getter. But if at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to give the quality work without absolutely killing yourself and working, until 4 a.m. and sleeping under your desk. Not that I've ever done that. But you do need to, it is a skill that you need to learn. And I think some firms have some internal mechanisms that you could we had an associates committee at my firm that you are able to approach, and they are supposed to be advocates for associates. It's a bit of a, hopefully you can do this and not. Well, anyway, the point is you can go to an associates committee, and if you are getting kind of pulled in too many different directions, they can kind of help you navigate that. If it's something where you just don't feel like you're able to, protect your time and protect yourself, that sometimes that can help. Or, just being very straightforward with putting it in the light of I don't want to sacrifice the work that I'm doing on this matter. I would be more than happy to work with you. I'm thrilled for the opportunity. Thank you so much for coming to me with this. I just think right now I can't take that on. But it is tough, and and honestly, I think most junior associates don't end up saying no. But, I think in the long run, you are doing yourself a disservice because you just will not have the mental bandwidth or capacity to do absolutely everything that might come your way and do it well.
And the thing is what they'll remember the mistakes you made or the fact that you didn't turn the work in on time or, that sort of thing. And I was working with someone recently that lost their job from a big firm, and they were working, 250 hours plus per month for weeks and never turned down any work. And then they were supposed to be there just basically to present some papers to a partner that were already done to give to a client one morning, and ended up sleeping in and lost their job because they slept in, so that, and so, the law firm doesn't care that you've done 250 hours worth of work for several months and exhausted yourself. They just remember the mistakes. And so, you need to make sure that you never take on more work than you can handle. Otherwise, it can really hurt you if you do make mistakes.
What about, this kind of goes along with your work management, trying to ensure that you don't need too much hand-holding. This is, I'm sure, difficult, especially with complicated matters, but how do you go about ensuring that you know what you have to do without appearing that you need to be, looked over and babysat?
I think it's okay, especially as a junior associate, it's perfectly fine when you get an assignment to ask a lot of questions. I think Harrison mentions in his article, feel you should ask a lot of questions up front to understand, exactly what you need to do on the assignment and what is expected of you. And I think it's generally a good policy to ask, maybe other associates, other mid-level senior associates that you trust and that would be able to kind of help you out for help. I always tried to kind of go to associates before I went to partners if I had questions about an assignment. But yeah, I think if you do have questions, which you probably will, because a lot of working at a law firm is just sort of learning on the fly, you should certainly ask them up front and then do everything you can to try to figure things out on your own, or get other sort of senior supervising associates to maybe help you out if they've had experience with similar assignments.
You also have access to amazing amounts of precedent. In most law firms, there's some sort of shared drive that you can access, like do searches and find other content that has been created and saved to that shared drive. So that is an absolutely invaluable resource to, if you sort of have a question of like, what should this format be? What should this look like? How have other people done this in the past? Doing your own kind of research on the internal resources that the firm already has produced in the past can definitely give you some insight.
How important is it, do you think, to be, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, to dress nicely when you're going to work? Again, this is not something that maybe is front of mind for people who are first starting out, but I think especially in a law firm, looking your best is really important. This is a bit impolitic to ask, but what do you guys think? How important is it to be dressed well to keep your appearance up?
It's important. You need to look as I think it depends on the firm. So there's different types of firms. Where people may all dress the same, and it may not be that nicely, but you still need to look good, and you need to, try to look as professional as you possibly can, around, you don't want to dress better than the attorneys you're with, because then otherwise you'll look like you'll look stupid. But you want to dress in a way where, you're not acting like a slob. Now, I don't know that it's just as important to how you dress. I mean, it's also keeping yourself up and not looking frumpy and so forth. And I can remember early in my career, like I was working at a very uptight law firm where everyone dressed up and that sort of thing and looked really dressed well. And I walked into a partner's office one day, and he was taking me out to lunch to discuss working on a big case. And the first thing I saw him do when I walked in was look at my shoes. And my shoes weren't scruffy, but they weren't like, shiny. And then, I thought that was kind of unusual. And so I got them shined, right away, and then started shining my shoes. And I noticed that all the associates that were working with them always had really well shined shoes, and you could practically see a reflection off of, which sounds ridiculous, especially in this day and age. But, that's just what was important to the guy. And he was representing big companies. Like I think his biggest client was Texaco, and that's what they thought was important. So, there's certain law firms where, if you don't, shave or, look good, where it's going to be an issue for them. So you just want to look, you want to look healthy, and you want to look like the kind of person you would want representing you if you had a legal issue. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be, in the best shape or have the best grooming or but you should be someone that looks like the kind of person you'd want doing work for you. And every client has different types of firms. I mean, it's different types of expectations.
What do you guys think about, we're talking a lot about the quality of work, and, obviously doing it on time is incredibly important, and doing it the first time right is really important. Not easier said than done, though. And I wondered if you could give some directives, some advice to people about how to ensure that the work that they're going to turn in is going to be accepted the first time around. Again, easier said than done, but do you have any pointers?
Yeah, I think that you need to you need to treat your drafts and everything that you're working on as final products, right? And then I think you need to actually give yourself some time kind of scheduled in to give yourself a chance to read it with fresh eyes, because sometimes you're just kind of working frantically and you have been working on it so diligently for so much time, and then you just think, okay, finally I'm done, I just want to send it off, and it's out of my mind. But you have to build in time to literally go back and read it with fresh eyes, see if there's any mistakes, see if everything makes sense, reading it fresh. And I think that is one thing that I think people don't like build in time to edit. And I think that's where you can kind of get in trouble. Also, making sure that if you are working, collaboratively with somebody, and there's like track changes, that you have actually gone through and looked at all the track changes and made, like, literally people will notice if you have like not accepted a change for adding a space or something. And, those like little mistakes. So kind of making sure that you've done all the track changes, accepted all the track changes, seen everything. I mean, it's really just the minutia. But those types of little mistakes can definitely add up. But I think most importantly, it's just giving yourself that opportunity to look at it again.
Yeah, and just making sure. I mean, the draft never means something with typos on it. I mean, it's just, a draft means, something that's very, very good, but you think with an extra day, you could maybe make exceptional or even better. It means, that there's not a lot of superfluous language but the biggest thing I think is that, what an attorney is selling is their work product and their ability to, write in a very clear and convincing manner, much more so than their clients are, and the quality of your work and what, you're showing to a client is, what is how they're represented. So if they're represented by someone making a lot of typos and mistakes and so forth, that doesn't make them feel good. And, the better work you do, it's important. And, it's what clients are selling. And what law firms are selling.
Yeah, and I suppose what you're selling is your work, and being available at all times is probably incredibly important, especially, again, in your early part of your career. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how important it is to be seen, to be available really anytime, weekends, holidays, evenings, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think this, goes back to sort of showing your commitment at a law firm. And we recorded a podcast about why commitment is so important. But I think, responding quickly to both client emails, partner, other associate emails is important. I think we talked about on the last podcast that there's sort of an unwritten rule that you need to respond to emails. I felt like it was within 2 hours of getting an email, certainly from a partner. When I was at a law firm, I felt like you sort of needed to respond within, an hour, certainly no more than 2 hours, even on weekends and on holidays. Maybe with holidays, there's a bit more leeway, but on weekends, I felt like I needed to respond pretty promptly. And that goes for, responding early in the morning, late at night. Obviously, I don't think it's expected that you respond at 3 a.m. in the morning. But if you get an email at 3 in the morning, you should probably respond, when you wake up around 7 a.m. or so. But anyway, yeah, obviously to your clients, their matter is the most important thing in the world. And I feel like by responding quickly, certainly to clients, you're showing that you take the work that you're doing for them very seriously and that you're very committed to them.
And unfortunately, I think actually sometimes you do need to be responding at 3 a.m. If you're working with partners who are up and working at that time, they often will be expecting that you are too. If they're working, you're working. And that's an unfortunate reality. And the things that can, even if you don't think that you have any work that would be pressing over the weekend, the kinds of things that can come up on the weekend are, and happen to me multiple times, is like a client pitch. That's the kind of, and so like they need to do a client pitch, and they need you to do some research related to that. And they're going to go pitch that client this weekend. So even if you're kind of not expecting anything, something can absolutely come through that you do need to respond to. And especially when you're a junior associate, you're kind of the low man on the totem pole. And that stuff will fall to you to take the first crack at putting together, some analysis and that kind of thing. So yeah, you have to be available.
Thanks, everyone. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for this edition of Lawyers Rising. My thanks to Brie Mills, Romina Filippou, and Harrison Barnes. If you're an attorney looking for a change, go to bcgsearch.com.